All right, folks, looks like the long and arduous government shutdown coming to an end. A couple of things have to happen procedurally for this to become official, but 60 senators voted to end debate on this, now figuring out just how much debate there will be before the bill is voted on and sent down to the House for approval. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Friends, welcome to the program. And of course, I've been following this here all weekend, looking at all of the developments. And last night, as news of this began to break, I thought, did the Republicans cave? Because there were a number of reports where people were saying, hey, it looks like the Republicans are going to give up on some things. And I quickly, as I scoured the various reactions from Democrats observing this, determined that I don't think the Republicans really caved because the left was incensed. I've never seen so much fury in one place on the internet in one time ever. Holy heck, my goodness, it was people were beside themselves, I'm telling you. A complete and total capitulation is what some called it. Feckless. I think that's my favorite word I'm seeing all over the internet. Feckless. Well, Olbermann, other people, they're all using it, describing the 8 Judas senators. Democrats, one independent in the mix, of course, Angus King from Maine, who's been consistently a yes vote on the CR, describing them as traitors to the country. So a lot of hyperbole. So what happened here? Why did this all occur or come down the way it did? And I think one thing that stands out in my mind, when you look at the people that did finally provide the votes to overcome the 60 vote threshold of the filibuster, you look at who these people are, and this is it's you look at them, who they are. Okay, so Dick Durbin of Illinois. Durbin is a retiring senator, long Senate career. He's on his way out. Tim Kaine in Virginia. Tim Kaine, he's not retiring, but remember, Kaine represents a state where there are a lot of people employed by the federal government, right? These are cities, towns around Washington, D.C. A lot of people are affected there by the shutdown, so no doubt received some pressure from his home state. But you look at places like New Hampshire. Both of New Hampshire's senators, Jeanne Shaheen and Maggie Hassan, both voted yes. And one thing about this is New Hampshire is a purple state. New Hampshire is a state like Nevada, and remember, we now had both of our senators here in the great state of Nevada vote yes on the reopening. Jackie Rosen joining Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, who had been a yes all along. So Rosen threw in the towel. Another purple state. I'm convinced, when you look at it all together, that there must have been polling, internal polling, that gave these swing state Democrats pause. They saw polling that we did not see, right? Because in the world of polls, there are the polls that get released, and then there's the polls that are done internally. And the internal polls, incidentally, I've long suspected, are much more honest, unvarnished, and typically go to the source, because a lot of these other polls get specifically commissioned to tell a story and to push a certain thing. And it's the way they're phrased, and it's also the people who are funding it, obviously behind, who are behind them. And I mean that, of course, even in the media. So here, you look at the, that in 2 swing states, 2 purple states, Nevada and New Hampshire, both had all of their senators join this, tells me that there might have been some panic behind closed doors. Now, the panic, panic is not how I would describe the reaction to all of this. But like I said, no, it's vitriolic. There is a tremendous amount of anger, and it's directed predictably at one person. I tell you, everybody, the minute that the news of this spread, Chuck Schumer's name started getting dragged through the mud. I told you folks that this would happen. I predicted this as we were closing in on what was it? Well, I told you this right on the 1st of October. But when it became clear that the Democrats would shut down the government, I realized that you had a handful of old guard leadership, at the top of which, of course, is Chuck Schumer, who are being held hostage by the lunatics in the party, the change agents, the revolutionaries. You had that Mondani guy in New York picking up steam. You have AOC and the rest of the squad who kind of suck all the oxygen out of the room whenever there's a discussion about the future of the Democratic Party. It certainly is not Nancy Pelosi, who's retired on her way out and has since declared herself to be out of Washington. But you also have Chuck Schumer, and I mentioned that they're behind the scenes is a fight. And the fight is, Chuck Schumer, desperately trying to cling to his political career. It was never going to be a win for Chuck Schumer. And he's been on the political scene for a long time, an immensely powerful person in Washington, and he's done. This shutdown, from the minute it started, when Chuck Schumer gave in to the crazies and went along with it and decided to push this in order to stay relevant, at some point somewhere, this thing was always doomed to end, thankfully, with the Democrats capitulating. And because of this, Chuck Schumer was set out from the beginning to be the fall guy. Imagine for a minute, and hear me out on this, imagine for a minute that you are AOC. Now, what do you, presumably you have some aspirations to become the senator from New York, not just a congressman. And the one way you become senator in a state like New York that elects really only Democrats is that you've got to wait for a Democrat to either retire or become so politically vulnerable that it is politically acceptable for you to run against him. And that opportunity, AOC is a lot of things. She's absolutely very smart and politically astute. That opportunity, in her mind's eye, arose sometime last year as Schumer and other Democrats in the Senate began flailing. So AOC had a choice, right? She can get Schumer to go along and push the shutdown. And if it works out, fine. She's still the cutting edge of the spear as far as the radicals are concerned in the party. But if it doesn't work, she maintains her position and is, can easily take advantage of an opening there when Chuck Schumer invariably is chased out by the mobs. That's happening right now as we speak. People are coming after Chuck, and it's even louder and more significant than I'd even imagined. So this all is occurring, and what was this all for, by the way? We're at day, 41 now. What was this all for? What did it achieve? And people on their side are asking the question. And then what I think is the oddest thing is you've got the Democrats, you've got the people in the media screaming and upset that the shutdown is ending. These are the same people that were mad as hell that this was a government shutdown that had happened in the first place, blaming it on Republicans. And now that it's ending, not because anything Republicans did, but what Democrats did by stepping across the aisle and voting with Republicans, now Democratic ire has shifted back to the Democrats. It's very difficult to keep track of all this logic. I mean, whose fault is it anyway? You guys were telling us it was Republicans that caused this. But now you're upset at Democrats for ending it. Sheesh, make up your minds. Sam Mirejovsky here on the What's Right Media Network. Be right back in just a moment.
I'm the best.
Personal injury law has been the same for a long time.
The best.
Big egos, greed, and sleazy schemes. We've had enough. Welcome to Sam and Ash, the new standard for personal injury law, where things are done the right way, because you deserve a team that delivers real support and results. When you have both, your whole world can change. Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky here on the What's Right Media Network. Big news, of course, at the beginning of the week here with the government shutdown, the end of which is now on the horizon, as Democrats have caved, at least a sufficient number of them have thrown in the towel to allow on procedural votes this bill, this CR, modified CR, to be voted on at a near and future date. Okay. Well, by the way, email sam@whatsrightshow.com. That's where you can reach me, at What's Right Sam on X, formerly known as Twitter. So, well, look, here is, I'm just going to play it to remind you where we were at right at the beginning of this. This is me the day after the shutdown started. I just want to play. I'm playing this because this was my prediction about how this would all play out for Chuck Schumer. There is just one political certainty that will come from this government shutdown, and that's the end of Chuck Schumer's political career. If you think Chuck Schumer is pissed at Trump, you don't know. You cannot imagine the level of animus that man must have right now for AOC, who is going to be his political nemesis and his political undoing. Fearing an attack from the left, Schumer and other moderate Democrats decided to go all in on this. They're going to fight it. We're going to show the Democrats that we're fighting. But like I mentioned before, Trump's agenda is mostly funded. He can weather the storm. And he did, right? Trump did weather the storm. I mean, that's a fact, and it's an objective reality here. It was actually the SNAP funding, the SNAP benefits that ultimately, I mean, you saw this in the Supreme Court over the weekend. Even, I know, even Ketanji Brown Jackson voted with Trump. The most liberal, crazy justice on the court sided with the Trump administration and gave them a victory, which essentially meant Trump was not compelled to pay SNAP benefits. I'm convinced, of course, that was a pressure point on the Democrats as well. So there we have it. Okay, so this is it. And now Chuck Schumer, of course, having been put into this position or pressured to take this position by the left flank of his party, is going to have that same left flank, who is appeased now for 40 plus days, eat him alive. Here's Ro Khanna on Schumer being the future of the Democratic Party. Khanna is a freshman congressman from California, Democrat, and he's one of the part of this new guard, is certainly a liberal member of the House Democratic Caucus. Listen to what he thinks Chuck Schumer's future role in the Democratic Party is.
This was the straw that broke the camel's back. You had Chuck Schumer cheerleading into the war in Iraq. You've had Chuck Schumer cheerleading for a blank check to Netanyahu. You've had Chuck Schumer betraying us on the first shutdown. You then had Chuck Schumer given multiple opportunities after Zoran won the primary to at least endorse him, even if it was a pro forma endorsement. He doesn't do that. And now he's not even willing to fight to make sure that the ACA subsidies don't increase. So to your earlier question about, are there difficult questions on SNAP benefits and troop pay? Of course there are. And maybe if this was the only context, Chuck Schumer would have some grace and goodwill and say, okay, we disagree with this deal, but it's not enough to call for you to step down. But this is the culmination of someone who just doesn't get it, who doesn't get how much people are hurting, who doesn't get where the base of this party is, who doesn't get how upset this party has been that we're giving all this money to overseas wars and not doing health care here, who certainly is never going to support Medicare for all. She's not the future of the party.
And that's because the future of the Democratic Party, as was made evident last week, is embracing radical socialists like Zohran Mamdani. Medicare for all, single-payer health care coverage, I think, is where they're headed. And frankly, by the way, this is another side note to the conversation. If Republicans don't present a viable alternative, it's going to be quite persuasive. Now, the ACA subsidies, here's the reality. Chuck Schumer actually, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, I'm going to come out and defend him. Chuck Schumer's not wrong, even though he himself voted against the government reopening. It's not wrong to have allowed this, to the extent that he played a role in it, to happen. Because he knows better than just about anybody that the votes for continued ACA subsidies simply weren't there in the Senate. And it would be a replay of what happened 3 years ago when this originally came up to a vote. There's a reason why senators did not, even then when Democrats had far more political power in Washington, did not have enough votes to get these subsidies to be permanent. It's not there because it's a lot of money, and it's money we don't have. And really what we're doing is throwing money into a bottomless, broken pit. Because we recognize that health insurance, the way it's set up through the ACA, is flawed, and it's just it's a longer conversation about this. But Chuck Schumer recognizes that the votes, even if the Republicans came, okay, let's do it. We'll do straight up and down vote on these ACA subsidies. What are we going to do? The votes simply aren't there. But that did not stop everyone from piling on. Lefty radio host Dean Obeidallah saying that Schumer's the wrong person to lead from this point forward, to lead the Democrats, that is.
To me, this idea of left or right or more progressive on ACA subsidies, almost 80% of Americans want the subsidies to continue. That's not left or right. That's right and wrong. Almost 60% of Republicans want the ACA subsidies to continue. Chuck Schumer should have negotiated a better deal. He should have been in the public more. He's not a bad guy, any stretch. He's just not the right person at the right time. We're going through a different time. You're dealing with a GOP that's an anti-democratic movement. They don't care what the American people think on an issue like this. So I think, honestly, this is the end of Chuck Schumer as we go forward.
Boy, I mean, this is just nonstop today. A whole wall of this kind of reacting. Now, listen, the senators all gave their different reasons, right? Particularly the 8 that went along with Republicans and finally got this thing moving forward. But I think it was actually interesting because a number of these conversations. Did you hear actually Tim Kaine, his excuse? Tim Kaine had the best excuse. Basically, in sum, Tim Kaine said, "Well, I couldn't really. I didn't have time to really get involved in the debate because I was too busy with the election in Virginia." I think what Tim Kaine meant to say was, we just held out until the election in Virginia. And now it's time to get the government open.
Do you wish that you would have started looking for this off-ramp sooner? You said that Republicans were never going to change in their position.
I didn't fully understand how dug in they were. Again, because I was so focused on the Virginia elections, I wasn't in this discussion on the healthcare to see how dug in they were. But even as I was not part of these discussions, I was saying to Thune and others on the floor going back, listen, some of you heard me say this in the hall, I need a moratorium on mischief. Others are working on the healthcare thing, I trust them. Others are working on the approach thing, I trust them. I need a moratorium on mischief. Because if we vote to open and then the immediate step next week is Donald Trump fires a lot more people, it's going to blow up trust to get the full year deal. And so I've been preaching this moratorium on mischief for a month. But I think partly why did they finally give me the moratorium on mischief on RIFs? They needed my vote, but they also saw the election on Tuesday.
Imagine being a furloughed employee, government employee, or a an essential worker in the government who's had to show up to work without pay. And this guy's talking about, oh, I need a moratorium on mischief. These are the people that brought the mischief. It's the Democrats that they're the ones who did this theatrical shutdown and now are left holding the bag, nothing to show for it. Fascinating stuff. Okay, more reactions on this and some procedural steps when we return. Sam Mirejovsky here on the What's Right Media Network. Greetings, friends. Welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone, just operating my my communications hub here on my computer and getting some great emails and texts. Sam at what'srightshow.com is my email. At What's Right Sam on X, formerly known as Twitter. Reach out to me there for look, the show's live. So if you send me something during the program that I can respond to, I will do it. Okay. Yeah, the Supreme Court, this is big news today as well. Supreme Court turned down an appeal from a county clerk in Kentucky. Her name was Kim Davis, or is Kim Davis. She was a clerk there, former clerk now, to overturn the gay marriage, the same-sex marriage case. So that's not going to get heard. Which means effectively, Oberfeld, the case remains a good law. Can I point something out as an attorney? No commentary on the merits of the case. I want to think of something logically of how it would work. Let's suppose for a minute that the Supreme Court did rehear the case and voted to overturn it. Now, I guarantee you, somewhere, someplace in America, there was at least one gay person hoping that was going to happen. Now, you're probably looking at me going, oh, I'm crazy. What are you talking about, Sam? Well, imagine for a minute that you are in a marriage that is loveless, that is miserable, but that will be expensive for you to get out of. Many people, mostly men, have faced this problem. Now, one thing that comes with gay marriage is also gay divorce, right? It's, that's a fact. So I'm just saying somewhere there was at least one gay guy who went out of his marriage and thought, if only the Supreme Court would come along and wipe gay marriage, and my marriage would be null and void, and that would be that. I could walk away from my responsibilities. Because that's logically the problem, right? You've had now a long time of people entering into marriages. Those marriages mean something legally in the law. And now what do? You wave a magic wand, you undo that? I mean, it would be enormously disruptive. And so I'm not saying that's the reason that the Supreme Court decided to punt this, but I wouldn't be surprised if one of the reasons, one of the factors, just when you logically think about it, it'd just be an impossible task, legally speaking. Okay. Well, okay, yeah. With it, you heard the news at the bottom. The problem right now, the problem is we're going to have to, as far as the shutdown goes, the Senate still has to vote, formally pass this new version of the clean CR. And there are very little changes to it, but I do think I read somewhere there's an additional bit of language put into this bill that gives up to $500,000 to lawmakers who get spied on by the Department of Justice without being notified. So you remember how we've found out that the Biden administration had subpoenaed the phone records of several prominent Republicans on Capitol Hill. Apparently, people in the Senate got ticked off and have added this provision into the CR. So it's coming back to the House, at least in that one way, slightly different. But I could see Democrats voting for it now with Trump in the office, and if they really do believe that Kash Patel and Pam Bondi are the rogue agents they always claim they are on TV, Why wouldn't they want some level of protection against political spying? So I don't think that's going to be a poison pill in the Republican-led House, but we shall see. Nonetheless, I predict it's going to now take maybe 2 days for everything procedurally to shake out, maybe 3. The reactions from the leftists, from the Democrats over this. I mean, the ladies at The View today just about lost their minds. Here's Sunny Hostin talking about how disappointed she is in Democratic leadership.
Let's be clear. The Republicans run the House. The Republicans run the Senate. The Republicans run the White House. The Republicans run the Supreme Court, as far as I'm concerned. This was a choice by Republicans to cut SNAP benefits. This was a choice by Republicans to cut ACA subsidies. This was a choice by the Republicans to gut the federal government and federal employment. Democrats had nothing to do with it. I want an opposition party. So the bottom line is the Democrats went into this after a blue wave out of the American people saying we do want the opposition. The working people want the Democratic Party to fight for them. And now they just caved and surrendered. I think Chuck Schumer, his days are over. If he cannot keep his caucus together, he needs to go. He needs to be replaced.
What? Look, poor Chuck. He's getting thrown under the bus, and they keep backing it up, beep, beep, and then riding over him again and again. Here, they are furious. But I predicted all of this would happen. So, Sunny Hostin, actually, this is weird, said that people in her family receive SNAP benefits. Some people in my family receive SNAP. This was a little throwaway line. And I think one of the unintended consequences of the government shutdown, my honest opinion is, everybody in America is a little bit more aware of just how many people are on SNAP. And, people are going, what? 1 in 8 people? They're looking at Sunny Hostin, a multimillionaire, and saying, yeah, people in your family that are on food stamps, maybe you should take care of your family. I don't know. Maybe you should send them a couple $100 a month so they can get by.
I completely disagree with you, Sunny, for this reason, what you rattled off. The Republicans run the executive branch, the legislative, the judicial, according to you. They have all the power right now. The problem here is it's a privilege to say our food's not affected, our health insured,
there are people in my family that receive SNAP benefits.
I'm not just saying, I'm not meaning family. We're all affected by, as we go out. But I'm saying right here to say it's a privilege that they don't have health care and now they don't have food.
Wild stuff, right? Interesting. Do you pick up this, speaking of the SNAP benefits, you pick up this kind of some of these odd arguments you've seen about people's lifestyle getting affected by SNAP, getting taken away, getting defunded. I mean, this was on Friday, okay? This was Friday night. CNN political analyst Ashley Allison is her name. And it was just this little thing that she said about people in the spas, eyebrow techs, these are people that do eyebrows and lashes, are getting laid off because SNAP was cut. Let's wait. Let me play the clip.
This is having massive impact. I went and got my eyebrows done the other day, and my eyebrow technician was like, they're going to fire 2 technicians from here because all of our clients don't have money to come. She's not on SNAP.
I always come back to this, my own experience growing up and, my parents, coming to this country, immigrating to this country, very little money. And we would go to the store and we, certainly no public benefits, no welfare. When parents would take a little money they had and buy the essentials, right? We didn't buy soda. We didn't buy cookies. We didn't buy, candy. Lived a really, ascetic, simple life. And, my parents didn't have money to go get haircut. I was a kid. My mom gave me a haircut. And, my mom's talented at a lot of things. Giving haircuts not one of them. So I had an absolutely hideous haircut growing up. And it just how it was, because going to a salon or getting a haircut, going cuts for less or whatever was just not going to happen. And this is hard to hear, right? Because on some level, we all understand if you're going to go hungry, there is a role for society to help you. Now, maybe it isn't the federal government. Hey, it's at the state and local level. But we understand that society cannot let people, particularly children, go hungry. But we're off the mark if eyebrow technicians are getting laid off because SNAP benefits were suspended, because what that tells me is that people are using these benefits in order to be able to buy food on your and my dollar, and then are using that extra money in their budget to live in an above standard way. Yes, society should help people that can't feed themselves, but not give them eyebrow treatments, okay? That's just a bridge too far. I mean, we're a country in debt, right? We've had a long conversation about this, and entitlements are a huge part of our deficit. And it's the principle of it, too. I mean, who in their right mind takes money from the state, turns around, and then goes to the salon and thinks that they're entitled to this? Like, this is a fundamentally, broken system. I feel, I don't know. I don't like the sound of this at all. And one of the things that is a consequence of the shutdown is all this has been blown open. And there are thousands of sound bites like this one that I just played. And they're going to come back, trust me, politically. They're going to come back, and they're going to come back to play. Now, the one that definitely is going to come here and be in the chat for the next 12 months leading up to the midterms is affordability, because sort of a big concept, and particularly when it comes to health insurance and health care. And this is where Republicans need to get a grip. Meaning, we have to be the party that provides solutions. Because if we're not, I'm telling you right now, folks, if we're not, the Democrats are gonna prevail. This is a hugely important issue. We can't pretend that it's not. Sam Mirejovsky here on the What's Right Media Network. Back in a moment. Don't go anywhere. Rarely wrong, always right. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. By the way, Sunday, before all this broke through, recorded an interview on ABC with George Stephanopoulos and Scott Bessent. And Bessent lays into Stephanopoulos. Let me tell you, this is on the shutdown, just real quick, to show you how they never like to be cornered. They never like to be accosted with logic. Because Bessent brought the receipts here, and Stephanopoulos was very happy to get to the break.
George, the best way to do it, and look, you were involved in a lot of these in the 90s, and you basically called the Republicans terrorists, and you said that it is not the responsible party that keeps the government closed. And so what we need is 5 brave, moderate Democratic senators to cross the aisle, because right now it is 52 to 3. 5 Democrats can cross the aisle and reopen the government. That's the best way to do it, George.
I can disagree with you about the history there, but we don't need a history lesson right now.
George, let's talk about
what's happening right now.
If you want, I've got all your quotes here. George.
I'm sure you do.
And
but let's talk about the situation right now.
Read your book, so you got one purchase on Amazon this week, and that's very much what you said.
This is great. I read your book because this is it, right? The party that digs their heels in and says no, when everybody on the other side says yes, is the party that owns the shutdown. And I think this got lost somewhere, and I'm coming back to it now because the sort of the final thought on the shutdown is, as we're looking to get out of it here, and it's close to being over, the party that kept trying to blame it on Trump and the Republicans, saying the Republicans have the presidency, the Republicans have the Senate, the Republicans have the House. And then the party then withheld the vote, so obstructed and prevented the reopening of government, the passing of a clean continuing resolution that would allow for debate to happen on all these important issues. They are now screaming at their own people for reopening the government. So it's an acknowledgement that they had the power to do this from the very beginning, right? Anyway, health insurance, folks. Where I had it here, I was pulling out from my stack of stuff. I saw this. Where was it? I was set to respond to it, and then I didn't do it. Yeah, there's somebody here who posted. Here I have it. Hold on. It's basically somebody had come across a taxi driver, allegedly, who showed him on his phone benefits or the cost of his benefits, of his health insurance benefits last year versus this year. And this is where it was. So this actually was a Ro Khanna tweet. And what it had is it showed, I mean, the costs just go hugely up year over year. And it's because fundamentally the ACA is broken. The exchange for insurance doesn't work the way it was intended, and it's driving costs up immensely. It is the slow creep of bureaucracy preventing true competition and the marketplace acting as a means by which to drive down the unit cost per insurance policy, per covered family. So all this makes sense. And the only thing that was keeping it down are these subsidies, which, were set to expire as is. So somebody retweeted it and said, basically, Luigi Mangione, the killer of the United Healthcare CEO, essentially justified in doing what he did. Now, we as Republicans, hear me out. Obviously, we are not going to devolve, and we cannot devolve into a country where the extrajudicial murder of a person is acceptable. But you have people on the left advocating it. Now, we're getting a little bit distracted as conservatives. It's just my opinion here. Getting a little bit distracted as conservatives, constantly hand-wringing over people that are writing this kind of crap on the internet, because we understand, of course, it's wrong. We understand that other people are going to act out on it, and the problem's only going to get worse. But here's my point. The danger that we have by constantly haranguing people that make these posts is that the sentiment behind it is real. When your premium goes up $2,000 a month or more, who can afford that? I mean, who can afford that? That is a universal problem. That's going to affect Republicans, Democrats, Trump supporters, Trump haters. It's going to affect the middle class. It's going to affect the poor. I think the only people that are maybe okay with this are the wealthiest among us. This is a real problem. So I don't want to get stuck talking about the symptoms, which is, crazy people on the internet saying we ought to basically go out and kill healthcare CEOs. I want to talk about what the solution is. And the number one solution to me is a complete rewrite of health insurance as it exists. And I will say it again, by and large, health insurance gets between me, my money, and my doctor. And I don't like intermediaries. If I had an intermediary between me and my grocery store, I guarantee you that the price of groceries would go up. And my choice of groceries would go down. The quality of my grocery shopping experience would go down. There's a whole school of thought on this, for example, we could go on to, there's lots of great examples of this, but if you take the most a brilliant person in America right now on simplifying things, on the marketplace, on the free market. I think of that person, that's Elon Musk. And Elon Musk, first thing he decided with Tesla, he's going to take out the middleman. He's going to take out the dealerships, right? And why? He's going to take his product direct to consumer. And there are all these rules and regulations in states that said you have to sell a car through a dealership, protectionistic stuff. We have to, Republicans, we're the free market party. The free market always does better for the consumer, and healthcare is no different. And I think it's time right now to scrape the whole thing and start over. I think there's room for this. But if it doesn't start happening now, the midterms are going to be an absolute bloodbath. And you can remember I said this. It's going to be a leading top issue. Now I want to talk about civility. Boy, I had an interesting experience yesterday I want to share with you. Stay tuned, folks. Sam Mirejovsky here on the What's Right Media Network. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone, Common Sense Conservatism, Monday through Friday here on the What's Right Media Network. Friends, good to be here with you. Had something happen to me yesterday that I did not expect. I'm going to share it with you here without giving any names because I'm still processing this, and I'm giving this person an opportunity to back down and come around, put it that way. Somebody wrote something about me on the internet that was not nice. It was a small, snarky comment. Now, normally, a comment like this would, of course, I would enjoy it, to be perfectly honest. Because people are saying snarky things about me, it probably means I'm hitting a nerve and I'm doing something right. So this person writes a snarky comment about me, and the reason that it caught my eye, well, it was forwarded to me by a friend. And the reason it caught my eye is because it's somebody I know. And so I reached out to this person, right? I reached out to him, and there I said, it's a guy. Okay, so I reached out to him, and I said, what the heck is going on here? And I got a barrage of, I don't know how else to describe it. It's the most outrageous stuff I've ever read. Now, I am friends with actual, honest to goodness, real Democrats, people that are in politics, who have real credible careers, who have done incredible things. We're not, on the same page politically, but have made a career in politics. And then of course I'm friends with people out there who, for different things and do different stuff. And sometimes I'm not even aware of their political views. So this person comes out and tells me that I'm a vile racist because I support Charlie Kirk. And then there was this whole bit where Trump is a rapist and all. I mean, just crazy, insane stuff. And, apparently this person had written some things about Charlie Kirk when he was assassinated that were certainly not nice. And apparently a lot of people came out to threaten him with all sorts of stuff. And I'm not even sure what of it happened, but here's my point. I'm reading all this, and I'm blown away. Number one, there are people that are close to us who are really angry right now. They're just angry. And the other thing that comes to my mind is that I don't know who actually came out and threatened him. I have no idea. But I think it could be bots. I mean, I was talking to Robbie about this. It could be bots, could be just people out there, causing problems. I honestly hope to goodness that no real person on our side was out there threatening somebody. This can't be who we are. This isn't right. Yeah, it doesn't make what he's saying any less crazy than it is, but it is never acceptable for our side to engage in this kind of rhetoric, whether we mean it or not. And certainly if we mean it, it's never, ever appropriate to engage in violence, threats of violence, any kind of violence, dealing with our political opponents. We always want to win in the war of ideas. It's why we talk. It's why we argue. It's why we debate. And by the way, we do debate. Our side debates incessantly. We're going through right now as a political movement a debate on who here is a good steward of it. And we're having an argument of major disagreements about the role of Tucker Carlson and others, and some really despicable people in our midst who are trying to weasel their way into our midst. For example, this Nick Fuentes guy, and we've talked about this extensively in the program. We've got some bad people, but the rest of us need to keep cool and calm heads. Because I'll tell you, we've got to bring the temperature down. It's so critical. Now, the other part of this is it's very difficult to have relationships with people who will be your friend one day and then think because of a political reason that and call you a racist. This is such a cheap shot. This is and it's actually, to be honest, really, it's the most low IQ approach to any kind of disagreement. This person actually reached out to my law partner and told her that I was a racist. This is just unbelievable stuff. And this is what I'm dealing with. Now, I'm dealing with it in part because this show has gotten prominent. I'm dealing with it because we have a following here, and many of you tune in every day, every week. I'm immensely grateful for it. And one thing that we have to do together, we've got to win, and we can't win by falling into their trap. I shared that tweet, somebody out there praising Luigi Mangione again while he was retweeting a snapshot of rising health insurance prices. This is what we're up against. There's actual, forget stochastic terrorism, there are actual real terrorists lurking among us who are done talking and are ready to act. What happened to Charlie Kirk was grotesque. And I still, my challenge to anybody who calls Charlie Kirk a racist is show me. Show it to me. Prove to me. Where's the clip where it shows Charlie Kirk is racist? I can find some clips where Nick Fuentes is a racist. Show me where Charlie Kirk is a racist. And what happens is these people never have it. They just say, well, he keeps company with racists. They use these smears to discredit you. And yet, even though they do this, we cannot fall in a trap of meeting their rhetoric. We just can't do it. We are right, okay? We have the right approach to things. Not 100% always on target, but by and large, if we have to pick two sides to be on, it's pretty obvious. We believe in the power of the free market. We believe in the individual. We believe in merit. We believe in safety and security in society. We believe in the rule of law. We believe in borders, just like every other country in the world. We believe in the dignity of human life. There are these core values that are, to me, vastly superior to just about any other thinking on this, particularly when we're looking at Zohar Mamdani and all of that insanity. So anyway, I had to share this with you because it's just absolutely wild in dealing with it. Anyway, quick break. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Back in a moment. Don't go anywhere. More of the What's Right show in just a moment.
The Sam and Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
Hi, welcome back. The What's Right show brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law, the only law firm to trust with your injury case. Phone number, easy to remember, 800-304-2000, 1-800-304-2000, offices in California and Nevada. All right, by the way, big news from the IOC. The Olympic Committee has made a big announcement. I don't think this is a surprise to much of anybody, but they're banning transgender women, meaning men who are competing against women, biological men, from competing in all female categories. So this is my favorite line from this New York Post piece on the story is, here's quote, "The decision to overhaul the current policy was made after the sporting committee carried out a science-based review of a biologically born male's physical advantages." This according to sources on the IOC medical and scientific team. This was all presented by Dr. Jane Thornton, closed-door meeting at the IOC. And so they called it a scientific, a factual, and an unemotional presentation, which clearly laid out the evidence. Okay, this is not a surprise to anybody, right? But anyway, big decision, and you can see the tide turning against this. And of course, hopefully this means more fair competition in future games. Sam Mirejovsky again here behind the What's Right microphone. Good to be here with you. Sam at what'srightshow.com is my email. At What's Right Sam on X, formerly known as Twitter. That's where you can find me. So, I'm telling you, there's something big going on down in Florida. And there are two grand juries getting impaneled in Fort Pierce. Now, Fort Pierce is the nearest federal court to Mar-a-Lago. And I'll tell you, that they're set to convene on January 12th, just after the new year. And this is part of the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Florida. And this one is in Fort Pierce. The other one is in Fort Lauderdale. Okay, they're not too far apart from each other. And the chief judge there, Cecilia Altanaga, has issued this appointment. It was actually in September and got worked on last month. And it's now getting released. It ought to be confidential, right? So somebody here's leaking this stuff out. But here's what I think this is all about. Based on the noise that I'm hearing, they are going to tie in the anti-Trump conspiracy, right? The Mar-a-Lago documents indictment, election interference, Russia collusion claims. All of this is going to get tied to the nexus and the raid on Mar-a-Lago. And because essentially the raid on Mar-a-Lago was sort of the last step of this ongoing conspiracy, tracing it all the way back to Obama, there is a good chance that the DOJ and whatever special prosecutor is appointed here to handle this is able to bring the case in Florida, which as a jurisdiction is going to be far more favorable to actually getting a conviction. I mentioned last week the sandwich-throwing former Department of Justice lawyer who goes into court, admits to throwing the sandwich at the ICE agents, and gets acquitted. He admits to the assault and yet does not get convicted of it. Why? Because the jury are a bunch of anti-Trump loons, and it doesn't matter what that person did. If it's perceived to be fighting the quote-unquote regime, that person's going to get off. Not so fast in Fort Pierce, Florida, or for that matter, in Fort Lauderdale. Remember I mentioned that this Operation Arctic Frost, this is the case against Trump and the this is a January 6th investigation that didn't begin and didn't launch until right before the beginning of the midterms, where the Republicans were set to pick a new president, a new nominee. And I've told you from the beginning that this whole thing was timed just to eliminate Trump politically. That anybody that comes out and says, well, this was not political, this was a legitimate investigation that was intended to prosecute, hold accountable people, including Trump, for trying to steal the election. And yet it wasn't brought in the weeks and months after January 6th or after Trump left office, but was deliberately paused and held in abeyance until the beginning of the midterms. And that's when you had the raids. And that's when you had the search warrants. That's when you had all of a sudden indictments coming down. It was all timed and executed to inflict maximum political damage. And one of the things I shared with you is it was called Operation Arctic Frost. Now, Arctic Frost is something that if you are a farmer, citrus farmer down in Florida, sometimes it gets cold in the winter and it can kill your crop. This Arctic frost comes in, it literally freezes the oranges, and that's it. It can destroy everything. Yes, it gets cold in Florida. At any rate, these Biden Department of Justice officials who were pursuing this case against Republicans, against Trump, did so with the intent to go scorched earth, like an Arctic frost on the orange groves, go scorched earth and destroy everything in and around Trump. That was their intention. They got too clever by half. And one of the things I think that will come back as a major theme in the story is the raid on Mar-a-Lago. If they had just kept all of their shenanigans to Washington, D.C., none of this would, they would be far safer, right? If every prosecution was in the District of Columbia or in somewhere in Virginia or Maryland, easy peasy. But getting convictions down in Florida and South Florida that is becoming increasingly Republican and is becoming increasingly hostile to Democrats, the crazier things get up north, I think is a danger, a huge, enormous danger for the people involved here. And yes, charges could include top names including, quite frankly, Obama himself. Merrick Garland is entangled in this. Lisa Monaco, Jack Smith, of course, Adam Schiff. And I'm not talking about the mortgage deal. I'm talking about the weaponization of government. Remember when Schiff would go into the skiff, right into the secure area in the Capitol, and he says, I've looked at the intelligence. I can tell you Donald Trump colluded with Russia. So, that is, there are things like that where it was a continued, sustained conspiracy to take out Trump politically. And the objective reading of this all is this isn't okay. It wouldn't be okay if our side did it. It certainly isn't okay if they do it. And the most upsetting thing about this is these are the people running around still to this day who are intent on putting their version of January 6th in the history books. Have you seen this? Today there's an article about how a number of states, of course they're all blue states, are pushing to have the true story, I put that in quotes, the true story of January 6th be put in the curriculums. K through 12, make sure they start teaching them young everything Trump did to steal the election. They want to enshrine the entire BS story of how it all went down. And this is just as we're getting news. In fact, today there was another bulletin about this, where a number of confidential informants had come forward to the FBI prior to January 6th. And they said that there was a strong possibility of armed conflicts. These informants had come out and said that Antifa was gathering, that they were looking to create mischief. And literally, the FBI said, man, we're not interested in this. They deliberately put a lid. This was Trump's own FBI. Christopher Wray put a lid on it. And now, knowing what we know about Christopher Wray, it all makes sense. Which, we throw around the word conspiracy a lot. This isn't just 2 or 3 people. This is, 60, 70, 80, 100 people working together to undo Trump politically. And not just in 2016 and 17, not just in 2020, but again in 22, 23, 24. All of it, of course, without much success. Be right back, folks. Don't go anywhere. Goodness gracious me. Yeah, I saw this. The largest teachers union in Nevada just endorsed our governor. Yeah, Republican governor gets a teacher's endorsement. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Greetings, friends. Welcome to the program. Yeah, well, look, this is obviously excellent news for Lombardo's reelection chances. Let me tell you how I feel about this. As a general rule, I think the teachers' unions are on the wrong side of the equation for helping students. Rarely is what is good for teachers, well, good for the teachers' union, good for the students. And I know that, I talk to teachers, and, it's obviously, what's good for the union typically benefits the bureaucracy. And the bureaucracy does little for the classroom. But we are at a crossroads here in Nevada, as we are in a lot of states across the country, with Republicans needing to hold the line. And one thing I can say about Governor Lombardo, as a Republican, he knows how to win. And we have to win this. And his opponent, right? I mean, the risk here is losing it. We haven't had the primary yet. So the Democratic presumptive nominee is someone named Aaron Ford. He's our current attorney general. And he today is having a terrible day because on the heels of this announcement by the CCEA, we also have found out that Trump has pardoned the alternate slate of electors people, including the 6 here in Nevada who participated in the alternate slate of electors in 2020, pardoned them of all federal charges in the matter. Now, our attorney general here is, I think, still pursuing state charges against Mike McDonald and others. Mike McDonald is, of course, the head of the Republican Party in Nevada, and he was indicted by the state, also at the federal level. They were pressing charges. So at least the federal charge is now going away. But Aaron Ford, that's how he pronounces his name, attorney general here, would be an absolutely terrible governor. And I want, politics is about winning. If there's something that we learned from this past week of ours, is that Republicans need to get serious about winning. And what I see here is a strategy by Lombardo to build a broad coalition that makes them bulletproof in a year when Republicans are going to face some electoral challenges. And that's not a bad thing. So for me, for this Republican here behind the What's Right microphone, I'm not going to sit here and take swipes at the governor, and as some are doing, saying that he that Well, that what kind of Republican gets the teachers union behind them? My goodness, what are you doing wrong? We should have had school choice, and instead we've got this. I get it. But I want Lombardo to win because can you imagine what the alternative is? We end up with this clown Ford as our governor just because Republicans are having an off year and Democrats go out to vote and Republicans stay home. Bad news for us. So those are my thoughts, of course, on that. Trump just pledged now that he would abide by the deal to end the government shutdown. So this is interesting. Really, what the Democrats got in the shutdown is a promise to work things out by December, and that's why they're so upset because it's nothing tangible. But Trump is talking about the healthcare system. This is great news. Trump needs to focus on this like a laser beam. I mentioned it last hour. It's so vital because costs in healthcare, they are real. A lot of the problems that Democrats have been championing lately aren't real problems. In fact, the Democrats have lost their way because they're not really pursuing any policies that matter to people. And if anything, have been supportive of a lot of things that are bringing misery to communities across America. For example, open borders and releasing every criminal out of jail as quickly as possible. Now, affordable health care, that's an issue. And why would we, Republicans, allow the party that's been lost in the wilderness to steal a good, viable issue from us? We need to fix this. And I'm convinced a Republican fix is better than a Democrat fix because Democrats just want to throw money at the problem. And typically when you have a broken system, here, healthcare insurance, putting more money behind it just makes the problem worse. Never in the history of any failing business, for example, has throwing money behind it and money only got that business out of trouble. If the programmatics, if the plan, if the business model is fundamentally broken, money just serves as an accelerant. It's like throwing fuel on a fire. So it's a bad idea. Trump's quote here is, and I tell you, we're going to be working on that very hard, speaking of health insurance, for the next short period of time. This is good, right? This is important. We want a healthcare system where we pay the money to the people instead of to the insurance companies. Remember what I said about cutting out the middleman? I hope Trump is listening to this. And health insurance companies, by the way, have a massive lobby in Washington. And it's completely disingenuous of the Democrats to go, oh, well, we're here to, we're enemies of the insurance company. With insurance companies give huge amount of money to the Democrats. Enormous. And Republicans too, no doubt about it. So there it is. This is the path forward is, and Trump, honestly, he can't just let it, he can't give this to John Thune and his merry band of Republican sheeple there in the Senate. He has to take charge of this himself. It's something the White House needs to tackle and designate a healthcare czar, someone who thinks outside of the box, who understands the industry and rewrites this thing. I would start from the very beginning. And I've said this before too. Imagine a system where you really have, you approach two different forms of coverage solutions. You've got your regular ongoing care, your maintenance care, all right? Wellness. You get a cold, got to go to the doctor. You got to get your blood work done. You go to a doctor, you go get a lab. You need medication, you go to the pharmacy. Okay, routine stuff. And then, heaven forbid, you've got the big stuff. A major disease, an injury, okay? Something that requires surgery or prolonged treatment. Big cost items. And I'm convinced, as this begins to develop, that somebody smart is going to identify this and say, hey, we have to separate those in two different buckets. And maybe the bucket where we have ongoing care. Maybe that's something that people would prefer to just pay for out of pocket. You go to the doctor, you go to the urgent care. It's $80 to $100. You pay for that out of pocket. Sure, it's cheaper than paying $2,000, $3,000 a month for health insurance, right? And then you pay for a separate form of insurance. That's your catastrophic care. I used to have a plan like this when I was young. I was starting to work. I was 19, 20, got off my parents' health insurance, moved out of the house, right? And parents were like, yeah, Sam, you need health insurance. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm healthy. And I went and I got a broker. I did not have health insurance through my job at the time. I contacted a broker and he looked at me. He goes, no, you just need this catastrophic plan. And it wasn't a lot of money back then. Certainly, this is over 20 years ago. But that's the solution, right? You have a type of coverage, a specific product that only deals in catastrophic care. And it's almost like a life insurance type of product. And, if life insurance premiums are reasonable because you have certain actuarial tables there's math behind what kind of risk there is. And so that risk is spread out among a population, and insurance companies make money and, of course, provide that form of coverage. So I think something like this is the solution. Kaiser has a different model, of course, where they bring everything in-house and you pay a monthly amount directly to the healthcare provider. And so it's insurance and care under one roof. Almost like a single payer system, but in a private carve out. Has its problems as well. But we have to get real about solutions, and there are solutions here. This can be fixed. And I mentioned this before, I'm going to say it again. It's the costs that have spiraled out of control are a function of the bureaucracy, the overhead. And this is incidentally the same problem that we have with education and other things. The amount of money spent per student in some of these school districts is astonishing. Growing up in LA, in Orange County, but just south of LA, and watching the the Los Angeles, Unified School District spend astronomical sums per student and underperform wildly. Administrators on top of administrators. People getting paid loads of money. Money going to the oddest of things. Nothing having to do with bringing quality education to the classroom. We got to think this way. We got to bring an efficiency expert in to look at health insurance. And everything ought to be on the table. And honestly, Trump has like 10 months to get this done. No pressure, folks. No pressure whatsoever. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Back in a moment. Hi, Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Friends, this opportunity over the next year is an important one. Trump's got to come in and take charge of this, prevent the Democrats from taking the House of Representatives in 26 and setting up 2028 for a win. Let me tell you what's happening behind the scenes. James Carville, who is a longtime DNC advisor, was a Clinton strategist for many years, is now old and cranky, but represents the pragmatic side of the Democrats. No question about it. He's not a loony, right? He's not a Mamdani. This guy's an old school Democrat, but he's a fighter. And he just did an interview laying out what's going to happen in 2028 and ought to scare the living daylights out of you. Here's what he said. A hint, it has something to do with the Supreme Court.
I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. A Democrat is going to be elected in 2028. You know that. I know that. It's going to be a Democratic House. It's going to be a Democratic Senate. The Democratic president is going to announce a special transition advisory committee on the reform of the Supreme Court, that we could have our third branch of government has lost the faith and trust of the American people, and as president, I'm going to do everything I want. He's going to appoint a blue ribbon, maybe Judge Ludick and the dean of the, just the usual suspects, all right? And they're going to recommend that the number of Supreme Court justices go from 9 to 13. That's going to happen, people. That's going to happen to you. They're going to win. They're going to do some blue ribbon panel of distinguished jurists, and they are going to recommend 13, and a Democratic Senate and House is going to pass it, and the Democratic president is going to sign it, because they have to do an intervention so we can have a Supreme Court that the American people trust again.
What does he mean by having a Supreme Court that American people can trust again? I mean, I'm curious, because I don't think it has anything to do with the American people. I think the Democrats want a Supreme Court that's going to rubber stamp all of their insane things that they want to do. And one of the things that's very clear is, by the way, Trump has won at the Supreme Court about 80% of the time. So the court is, even on the conservative, the quote unquote conservative side, is kind of hostile to Trump. I mean, Chief Justice Roberts is not like Trump in the least. Amy Coney Barrett doesn't like Trump. I'm just telling you, this is a court that is not bending over backwards to Trump. The problem with this court, as the Democrats see it, is that they call balls and strikes pretty fairly. Their problem is that 80% of the Trump agenda is getting greenlit by the court, because 80% of the Trump agenda, at least, is constitutionally sound. But the Democrats want a gatekeeping court. They want judges like the lower court justices. They want Judge Boasbergs on the Supreme Court. They want judges that are making law and ruling based on public policy preference and not on the Constitution. They want Ketanji Brown Jackson. Poor lady. I mean, she's not very bright. It's kind of an embarrassment. This one recent ruling where she sides with Trump on the snap tariffs, she might have made a mistake, honestly. I don't know what that was all about. But regardless, she, in her legal reasoning, puts in a lot of feelings. She talks about the way things ought to be fair and to be right and correct, none of which matters to the Supreme Court. It doesn't matter. The Supreme Court is there to evaluate whether or not a particular law or a particular executive action, for example, is constitutional. That's the role of the Supreme Court. I've had a number of conservatives tell me, looking at Great Britain, for example, Germany, other places in Western Europe that we've considered to be, friendly, free Western countries, devolve into, many police states and say, well, Sam, what a relief it can't happen here in the U.S. And I said, well, why not? And they said, well, because we have the First Amendment. And I said, the First Amendment only means what it means as it's decided by a reasonable Supreme Court. You pack the court, you add enough justices to overrule you on every decision, and guess what's going to happen? I know what's going to happen. All of a sudden, there'll start being carve-outs to the First Amendment. Well, you can say whatever you want to say, but if you cause harm, it's tantamount to an assault. And the government maybe won't come after you, but you're the person who got hurt by your words can sue you. Or maybe the government can come after you to stop an assault, to stop a harm. Gone will be the traditional test standard of what the First Amendment is. The limits and protections for free speech will disappear, and will disappear overnight as quickly as that new court hears a test case. And there will be armies of liberal lawyers, just as there are now, fighting everything, every issue, who will be out there tooth and nail, fighting for these things and bringing cases to the court, and the court rubber stamping all of this lunacy. So we really have a lot riding on this next 4 years, 3 actually. And these people are playing for keeps. So when we talk about the filibuster, for example, I know the attention is off of it now with the shutdown appears to be nearing an end. Republicans can sit around and say, well, we're going to do the right thing. We're going to take the high road. We're going to be reasonable, and traditional keepers of our democracy. But, the problem is the minute that the Democrats get into power, it's game over. And it ought to terrify us. So we got to get busy, and we need real solutions. We need a party of real solutions for ordinary people, just like we did with crime, just like we did with the border. Trump got in and started solving things. Trump is a solver. So when it comes to healthcare and affordability, Trump needs to start taking care of it. And I have a strong feeling he will. Okay, folks, be back not tomorrow. Tomorrow's Veterans Day, so we'll be off for that, but I'll be back Wednesday. Hopefully by then this shutdown is all resolved. Either way, follow me on X, follow me on Twitter. I'll give you updates of everything going on at What's Right Sam. This hour brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.